Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in that studio this morning, Monroe County Family Court Judge and Acting State Supreme Court Judge Stacey Romeo. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot to cover, but this is a judicial race, so it's not going to be too specific, but let's start with your background.
Well, currently I sit as the Monroe County Family Court Judge for the past 8 years. In that capacity, I'm also the supervising judge for all the family court judges in all 8 counties of the 7th Judicial District. I'm also a acting Supreme Court judge. I have been for the past 6 years. I've been in the legal community for close to 30 years now, and I've held a lot of hats in addition to what I've been doing the past 8 years. Yeah. I was a town attorney for the 2 towns in Monroe County. I had my own private practice. I was a law clerk in Supreme Court and in family court.
Wow.
And in that capacity, I have sat as a domestic violence hearing officer, a small claims hearing officer, a matrimonial referee, and a foreclosure referee.
Wow.
So I've done a lot.
You have done a lot.
I've done a lot.
So you're that busy. I know you're really active in the community, too. Where do you find the time to run and do? Why did you run? You've got enough going on.
Well, it's important. As you can see from my history, community service has been kind of paramount in my life leading up to what I do today. It's something that I teach my children. We have to give back to our community. Sure. It's not enough just to hold a job. Right. We have to make sure that we give back to what we get out of our community. So it's important for me to continue to do that for the next, hopefully, 14 years.
Yes, 14-year term.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it like that, the community, because one of the goals of the show, and we brought it up from the beginning, was to kind of bring back that sense of community. And it seems to be lacking in recent years. And I don't know, people can blame COVID or whatever, but there's not that support like there used to be. So I'm so glad that you said that. Thanks for saying that. We're trying to promote community on this program. You mentioned 6 years as acting Supreme Court judge. Was there anything about those 6 years that surprised you?
I think not necessarily surprising, but as I sit hearing family court matters and criminal matters as the youth part judge, it's a nice change of pace to do some other types of legal work in my judicial capacity. So not necessarily surprising, I would say refreshing to do something different than what I had been doing every day.
And how did you prepare for that role going from family court to Supreme Court?
I think it was natural for me, given my background, that I did work in Supreme Court as a law clerk for many years and actually held my own dockets as those referees for many years. So actually it wasn't very difficult for me to do that at all.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the 7th Judicial District. So how many miles have you put on your car?
Too many, if you ask my husband.
Yeah, no kidding.
Good thing we bought our car and did not lease our car.
Okay, that's good.
We travel every day.
Wow.
Every day.
Well, you've got Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, if that's not enough, Wayne and Yates counties. That seems impossible.
It is. Nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it and you're dedicated. So we travel to all those counties after work and on the weekends. I mean, everyone kind of forgets that I have a day job.
Right. That's
kind of an important day job. But I would like to say more important than my day job, though, is my mom job and my wife job.
Absolutely.
And I put it in that order.
Yeah.
Most important are my children. My husband knows he takes second billing to the kids. But it's really important to me to make sure that my children know that I'm still their mom no matter what is going on in our worlds and wherever they are and whatever I'm doing. So that's the order that I like to keep everybody in.
Well, what do the kids think of you running?
They love it.
Oh, do they really?
They love it. They were all there for my first campaign. And they're a little bit older now. My daughter is almost 22.
Okay.
And she's in law school herself.
Oh, wow.
I have a son who's 18 and is away at college. And then I have an 11-year-old who's in 6th grade. And they're used to the campaign trail. If they weren't helping me, they were helping other candidates. And so they are very excited knowing that this is hopefully my last race. But they're really excited to know that their mom is running for Supreme Court and is making a difference in our community. They're very proud of me, and
that's great.
They've been great helpers.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite, because they don't sign up for it, right? You're the one that signs up
for
it. So it's great that they embrace it.
But I have to tell you, especially obviously the older children, they're both eligible to vote.
Right.
they have gotten their friends, making sure that they are all registered and have their absentee ballots.
That's great.
Because they're both away at school. So I'm constantly getting little messages from their friends. I just voted for you. They send me,
that nice?
the picture of them at the mailbox. I'm voting for you today.
Oh, that's fun.
So I think it's important not only that clearly that they're voting for me,
right,
but it's important that they understand what their civic duty is and that they're spreading that to all of their friends, and knowing that it's important from the top race all the way down. People kind of forget how important it is for your local races, but especially your judicial races. We make a huge impact that people probably aren't aware of every day, and that it's important that every vote counts for every single race.
Do you find that it's difficult to get attention on your campaign because everybody's talking about the national level?
I think at the local level, people are really understanding that judicial races make a difference. I'm telling folks all the time that if you don't like what you're reading in the paper about policies that are made, and again, I can't comment on policies, but what I can say is if you don't like things that are happening, chances are someone's going to bring a lawsuit about it.
Right.
So it's important to make sure that you have the right judges in place to make those decisions that will impact the larger issues in our community and in our country.
And that's why, and you hit on that too, something we've made a kind of a cornerstone of this program is to try to interview as many guests as possible because it's getting tougher and tougher to find out about candidates. And you can go to websites, of course, which are very helpful. And yours actually electjudgeromeo.org. But the days of nonstop coverage of the local races they're gone, long gone.
Right. If you watch the news, it's all about the national race. And obviously, it's very important.
Yes.
This is a very important year.
Oh, yeah.
But again, every election is important. And I don't necessarily feel neglected, but I've taken it upon myself to educate voters as I go along the way. Been campaigning now probably about 250 days.
Wow.
So started in February, and we're under 2 weeks now, so we're pretty excited.
That is wow. When you think about it. So we were talking about how large the 7th Judicial District is. Do you find it? How do you campaign when it's that big? Does that make sense? I mean, how do you? It's not knocking on doors; it would be impossible.
It is not a door-to-door race. Although it's great meeting voters. I think the better use of time for me has been finding community groups and finding folks in each county who will tell me what the important issues are that I can't really address issues, but where I can be that folks might be congregating, events I can attend to meet greater populations of people, just to get my message out as to who I am and why I think I'm the best qualified candidate.
And when you're talking to voters, what are they saying to you specifically? What are their concerns?
I think people are concerned, basically, that not enough people are going to vote this year.
Oh, yeah, that is.
And I would concur, right? I obviously, selfishly, I need everybody to go out and vote and vote for Judge Romeo.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that people are concerned that either you don't like who's out there to vote for, or it's a done deal one way or the other, or why does my vote really matter? So just trying to get the message out. It's important to vote. Please vote.
Yes.
Please vote.
Absolutely. It's very important. And like you said, the local is what really affects your day-to-day life. So would you explain the race a little bit, just so when people go to the ballot box or early vote, which starts on October 26th, what should they know?
There are 2 spots for Supreme Court, and there are 4 candidates running. So it's a race where you should cast 2 votes.
Okay.
Obviously, I think your number 1 vote should be for Judge Romeo.
that makes it easy.
Stacey Romeo will be on the ballot. I always say I should change my first name to Judge. But it'll say Stacey Romeo on the ballot. But then you get the opportunity to vote for a second candidate as well. So make sure that you don't skip over that line, and that you vote for 2 candidates.
And that's it gets confusing because some people don't know that you can vote for 2, and that's why I wanted to hit that home. And we've been talking about a lot on the program. Look for that little thing that says vote for 2 and then vote for 2, right?
Right.
So again, 6 years on the Supreme Court, what do you think some of the biggest issues you will face in the next 14 years if you're reelected?
I think obviously COVID really was a huge impact for many, many reasons. But if we look at the microcosm of the judicial system, it had a great impact on us. And we're still digging our way out of how cases were handled. We've really come a long way in our 7th Judicial District where we don't have the backlog that you might hear about on the news that, even nationally, but definitely downstate, there still is some backlog they're digging out of. But going forward, we have to figure out a way to embrace some of the things we learned from COVID and how to integrate that in, but making sure that there's some civility back in the court system. We've been talking about that a little bit outside of this broadcast, where folks got comfortable doing everything virtually.
Yeah.
And some of the civility and some of
That's interesting,
the important, the grandeur of going into the courthouse has been taken away.
That's true.
And the respect for judges in the judicial system, I've seen some denigration of that. So I'm hoping that we bring that back in to the forefront going forward.
That makes sense, because it's so much easier behind a screen, right? To be rude in a way or not have the respect for the office if you're in your pajamas at your house, right? That's interesting. I didn't really think of that.
Right.
And there is something about going into an amazing courtroom and that kind of awe feeling that you have, right?
And it's more than that. A lot of things happen in the courthouse. People like to try to work on how to settle their cases. How do we get things done? It's a lot more difficult to do that on the phone, behind a screen.
Yes.
It's that person-to-person contact that I think really makes an impact going forward when you're in the court system.
So is a lot still done virtually?
It depends on the court.
Okay.
In my court, I like everything in person.
Sure.
I do some things virtually because there are some benefits to having things virtual. But some pieces of the court system are still virtual more than in person. But I find a benefit of finding an integration of both.
What do you look forward to the most in the next 14 years if you are successful? Excuse me.
Well, I think at this point, since I've pretty much done everything there is to do in the court system, I'm looking forward to really not necessarily shedding all the hats, but honing my skills and making sure that I can make the most positive impact in the Supreme Court that I can. It'll be my last race. I can retire from this position. So there's no worrying about what I'm going to do next, because I've reached the pinnacle of my career, in my opinion. So I'm excited to make more of a positive impact than hopefully I already have made going forward.
And I talk about this with all the judicial candidates, depending on whatever level. Isn't it weird that you have 14 years where you can't talk politics, or in your case, 6 years where you can't talk politics? Probably your whole really life you can't talk politics, except for this really small window. And you still can't talk about it, but you have to have an R or a D next to your name. Of course, you're Republican. That's got to be kind of weird, but it also gets you out of a lot of chicken dinners and during election season, right?
It is, it's interesting, and it is good, because judges should not be talking about
I agree.
Not only what their personal feelings are on cases, but politics as well, because when you have a case before me, you don't want to think, well, she's going to be biased because I heard her say this on, Big Fox TV one day, right? Because judges cannot and should not be biased. My personal feelings do not come into play. It's really a mere application of the law. And so I think it's important that we don't have politics in the political system when you're campaigning.
Do you think there'll ever be a time where they don't make you run in a party?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so.
And it's kind of a shame in so many ways.
Yeah, we talk about what would be a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's rock, paper, scissors would be a great idea. I don't
know.
know.
A lot easier.
Right? Other than that, I really don't have any good ideas.
No. It's a tough question. It's a $1 million question.
Right.
So I normally ask where people can find out more, but I've already said electjudgeromeo.org to find out all the information about your campaign. I know it's different. I can't even ask how people can help, right? Like how they can help your campaign?
I can't. I guess make sure that you come out there and vote.
Yes.
And I would say this is an important race. It's an important race for a community. Obviously, it's an important race for me and for my family.
Of course.
We have invested a lot of time into this, but it's my career, right? And this is the pinnacle of my career.
Yeah.
And Supreme Court is not a place for on-the-job training.
Right. And just before we go, in closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or before they go to the ballot on November 5th?
Well, again, if you want someone who can do the job without the on-the-job training and not take a chance, they should vote for Stacey Romeo, who has a proven track record of doing the right thing
Yep.
all day, every day in my courtroom, and that's what you're going to get for the next 14 years.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, coming all the way to the studio. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us.